Hi guys, I'm Susie Pepper. I'm so delighted that you're watching this video because we're going to talk about something that's incredibly important. It's the role of prior knowledge in learning. Did you know one of the top researchers in the world says this about prior knowledge? That it's the #1 indicator of who's going to be successful in our class. Above IQ or anything else, it's prior knowledge. So what students already know before we've even met them plays a huge role in how well they're going to learn in class today. Here's some other research that I've looked at a million times that's really eye-opening. You take a student at the 50th percentile. We push in a little prior knowledge. They don't have to know it all, just a little. That 50th percentile student goes all the way up to the 75th percentile. Unfortunately, the opposite is true. A student at the 50th percentile that doesn't have prior knowledge can drop to the 25th. So it is literally the difference of a student scoring here or here what we do with prior knowledge. Because after all, I have 30 students in my classroom and they all have 30 different banks of prior knowledge. That this makes so much sense to me as an educator because it goes a long way in explaining a real mystery. While one student sitting here seems to be getting this lesson beautifully and the student in the very next desk is struggling. A lot of it has to do with prior knowledge. Why? Because how we learn largely is I have my bank of prior knowledge. You're trying to teach me something new. My brain is desperately trying to connect with that. And if I have something and that makes sense with what I already know, wow, I'm learning this. But if I don't have it up here, I can't connect with this. So it's largely a misfire. Now let's talk about the positive impacts of prior knowledge. Students read better. It is a key indicator, a key component of reading comprehension. They listen better. They're more engaged. They remember better. And guess what? They even learn faster. Prior knowledge is amazing when you look at the research. So where can we insert these fun, wonderful strategies that help students get a little prior knowledge, share a little prior knowledge with a neighbor, and pull up that file on zebras or crustaceans or whatever it is we're going to teach today? Two logical places. One is in openers, the opening minutes of class. The second is acceleration. And what acceleration means in this context is if I have an extra 10 or 15 minutes with a student, wouldn't it be fantastic if I could spend a little time with that student on circumference, on crustaceans, read a storybook about hurricanes? It would give that student just enough prior knowledge to learn. And if that student has acceleration, wouldn't that be fantastic if they now come to class and we do a different success starter that taps into prior knowledge? Let me tell you a story that really demonstrates to me prior knowledge. Where I grew up, we went to the rodeo every year. I didn't participate in rodeos. I've never been up close to a bull, but I can tell you that I went to them, so I know the events. I've seen barrel racers. I know what the arena looks like. So if I'm going to read a story about someone in a rodeo, I have that up here. Okay, I know what you're talking about. Someone else who's never been to a rodeo may not know that. And so if they see a math problem about dimensions of a rodeo arena, they're not going to know as much as I do just because I've been to a rodeo. Think about students who've been to the ocean every year on trips. They have experienced undertow and seen tides and felt the adrenaline when a big wave comes. So when their science teacher's about to talk about wave energy or some other aspect of the ocean, they're like, okay, gosh, I know that. I've been there. Another student has certainly read about the ocean or seen movies about the ocean, but it's a different level of prior knowledge. In the same way, when I was growing up, I never saw snow. So toboggan is a foreign word to me. And I mention that for this reason. Prior knowledge and vocabulary are really tightly connected because a lot of our prior knowledge includes vocabulary, like the word toboggan. And so it's hard to pull those two apart. So let's move on to some strategies now. If this is such an important aspect of teaching, what kinds of strategies can I use? Well, they're going to be as different as the day of the week because we teach something different every day. I'm going to model some just to get you thinking, and then you can think about your lesson and what you'd like to do for yours. So let me start with a fun one. Grab bags are one that I like to use quite a bit. These are things to just kick off a lesson. For example, I might say, guys, we're talking about renewable and non-renewable. In your groups, is this renewable or non-renewable? Talk about it. Is this renewable or non-renewable? Now, if we're teaching in person, I can put 4 of these out there. If we're teaching online, I might have to demonstrate. Now, what are some other grab bag examples? I've done things with reading to infer. I've taken some and said, these are junk drawers from 3 different families. I want you to use your clues and you tell me a profile of this family. If I'm about to read a story to young children and they're going on a vacation, I might have in there, what would you take or pack or not pack for a vacation? So grab bags are one that you might want to use. One of my favorite strategies ever is sorting. Sorting can look so many different ways. What I love about sorting, from K-12, I've never had a student not participate in sort. So it's a fun way to start class, because what do I want at the beginning of class? I want every student to be excited about learning today. I want it to set up the lesson today. That's why I don't do warm-ups or go over homework in the opening minutes. So sorts, if we're teaching in face-to-face, they're like this. We touch them and move them, and that really helps with memory, engagement, because we're using multiple senses, right? But if we're on a screen, we can put them up there and they can put agree, disagree, or sort them on the screen. So let's talk about different kinds of sorts. Lots of ways. One is ranking. This one I just showed you is a ranking one. This is about where students would say, what do you think is going to happen to these colonists coming over to Jamestown? And they have to make decisions. Do you think they're going to run out of water? Do you think they're going to run out of food? Do you think there's going to be a problem with disease? And they rank it. Now, what I love about ranking strips is students get super excited about reading, because it's like they want to know if they're right or not, how their team did. Another fantastic thing is after we've sorted, when we're reading, we go back and say, oh, we were right on that. We're going to move that one around. So now you have your during reading strategy. So ranking is a big one that I love. Agree, disagrees, and facts and fibs are kind of similar. It just means that they're going to have a statement out there. Do you agree with the statement or disagree? For example, I use these with the book I like to read. It's called When, about the afternoons. I'll have a statement that says, math grades are lower typically in afternoon classes. They're higher in morning. Agree, disagree. And participants said, I don't know, agree, disagree. I might have another one about in the afternoons between 2 and 4, you're most likely to get in a car accident between 2 and 4. Agree, disagree. They talk about it, agree, disagree. Now, again, it gets our intellectual curiosity going. Now we're going to listen to the lesson, read, whatever we're going to do a lab, and then go back and revisit at the end. How do you feel now about your agree, disagrees? Facts and fibs are a little bit similar. What do you think is a fact and what do you think is a fib? For example, on this one, this is on a math example on equivalent fractions. I could have done this one with a fact or fib. I did it with an agree, disagree. Do you agree or disagree? Are these equivalent? And students will make a decision. Do you agree or disagree on those? So we can do agree, disagrees, facts or fibs. This one down here is one of my favorites, and it's really underutilized. It's called sometimes, always, never. It's very high on the thinking range. So what we would do there is students would take something there and say, okay, is that sometimes true? Always true? Never true. For example, when you multiply a whole number times a fraction, you always get a smaller number. Well, is that sometimes true, always true, never true? And they decide. You want to hear kids argue about math or science, give them a sometimes, always, never. It's amazing how well they do on those. And for younger students, we can even do alike or different with just pictures. Vertebrates and invertebrates, shapes. How are they alike? How are they different? So sorting is one that I use a great deal. It doesn't matter. From K-12, students love to sort. And again, you could do this face-to-face. If you're teaching virtually, we just have to put it on a screen. They can write agree, disagree. And any way that we can get them to talk back and forth virtually is wonderful too. Okay, go-to strategy that every student loves. We don't want to overuse it. Out for brainstorming, okay? You see how it's conducted, A to Z, right? We have a scribe who's going to quickly write down answers. If you can do this in a group, fantastic. If you're teaching virtually, I'm just going to let them do it on their own, or maybe we can work out some way technology where they can talk back and forth. For example, everything you know about taxes, go. A to Z. A, accountant. A, April. A, audit, right? B, bankrupt. Or we could say everything you know about civilization, everything you know about a pandemic, whatever you want to have. Now, how can I switch this up a little bit? Maybe this is too many letters for younger students, so you give half the alphabet. All right, we don't want this to go too long. And speaking of time, the amount of time we spend on these in an opener, my rule of thumb is 10%. But it depends. If it's a unit opener, we're opening a whole unit, that's going to be a little longer. If it's a lesson opener, the lesson's a couple of days, it may be 5 or 6 minutes. If it's a bridge, meaning we were talking about this yesterday and I'm going to revisit with you quickly, it might just be a couple of minutes. Now we can do writing prompts, we can do things like that. We can do also captivating questions. For example, when I teach the Trail of Tears, here's what I used to open it. When is it appropriate or legal for the government to seize your property? And let students talk about it, because guess what? There are times when the government can seize your property for eminent domain or other things. So let them discuss. And then I would say, well, guys, that's what we're going to talk about. Is it back in a period of time when the U.S. government seized some property? There was a teacher I saw once who was about to teach the gift of the Magi, that wonderful story we probably all read in high school. She started it with this question. What is your most prized possession, and what would it take for you to part with that possession? So we can start with intellectual questions like that to get them really thinking. When I teach my cotton gin lesson, I'm not going to start with, hey guys, how much have you been using that cotton gin this weekend, right? They don't use a cotton gin. So what I would do is have them start with their cell phone, a different invention. With your partner, how has this changed our economy and our society? Guess what? We're going to be learning about the invention back in the day that rocked the world like the cell phone did for us, and it was called the cotton gin. So I'm not going to probably start with the cotton gin because they don't relate to that, but I might start with the cell phone. So relevant kinds of things in the beginning. Now, one of my faves is a question wheel. Sometimes I call it a question sun, a question flower, whatever you want to call it, it's fine. You can draw it any way you want. One of our key things in helping kids want to read and be engaged today is questioning that they have. So this fits that research. So all you do is draw a simple structure like this. I did a little sun today. And guys, I'm so excited. We're going to be learning about snails, one of my favorite topics in the whole world. I'm going to kick us off. I want to know the questions you have about snails. I want to know how they reproduce, because there's sure a lot of snails out there. And I don't know what's going on at my backyard. How do they reproduce? What do you want to know? What's the slime for? I'd like to know that too. Let's put that question here. Now, I'm not going to tell them about this, but did you know the slime helps them move? It reduces friction. So we're going to come up with questions. Now, I'm not going to tell them the answers. We're going to be reading and doing some studying on snails today. As you find the answers, just put them on a question wheel. Now, the first time I do this with students, I do it whole group, because we haven't done this before. After that, I just give each group some chart paper, make your question wheel. Now, when you find the answers, let's put them up there. So we could use sorting, we could use grab bags, we could use error analysis is one I love, where I might use put mistakes out there. Like I have one on diseases where I have a journal a lady kept, a fictional person. She does a lot of things that spread disease. She didn't wash her hands, used everybody's pen, she's coughing everywhere, and students find the errors. I've done an error analysis for the Bill of Rights where I put some that are not true and students have to discover it. I've done one with Marie Curie where you have to find her the lab safety things that no one would do today. So error analysis are one. Another that I love are visuals. And you think about it, one of the easiest, fastest ways to get some prior knowledge is using visuals. Now, we could do a picture book, and those are available all the way up through high school. But if I don't have a picture book, what I'm going to do is put some visuals of the Great Depression on a screen and let students see what the Great Depression looked like. I'm going to put visuals of snails. I'm going to have visuals of angles, visuals of hurricanes. And we go through and I have students respond. I don't want them just looking at the pictures. I want them to respond and tell me what they're seeing there. So what are some strategies you can use? Boy, it varies every day, doesn't it, by what we're teaching? If I'm about to kick off a novel, I might have a survey that says, have you ever had a friend that let you down? Have you ever had to move? If I'm teaching inherited traits, surveys work well. Like, do you have dimples? Does anyone in your family have a widow's peak? And they can check off. So surveys are a really good way to start these as well. So let me just start wrapping up a little bit because prior knowledge is huge and there are a plethora of strategies we can use and they vary day by day depending on what we're teaching. I could use an alpha brainstorming. I could do some sorting. I could do some agreed disagrees. I could use a grab bag. I could do an error analysis. I could have some visuals. I could have a captivating question that really pulls them in. I could do a quick write that just gets them really excited and they could share with their partner. So the value of prior knowledge, the importance that we put in here will pay off later. The non-examples are things like warm-ups, going over homework. We want the opening minutes to really be captivating. There's something called primacy recency that's been out there for years, this research. What it means, primacy recency, is that we are going to remember largely what happened in the beginning and the end of a learning session. They're going to remember the opening parts of class. And we want to really hit their prior knowledge to get them captivated about today. We could do that in two places: acceleration, if I have a little time with students, or at the beginning of class. I am so glad you joined me for this video on prior knowledge. If you ever want to track me down or find other information, you can always go to SusiePepperRollins.com. Thank you.